The Buffalo Bills made it look easy against the 49ers last night, and as a result, you just heard me at the top of the second hour, at least hope you did, as the West Coast is waking up. Some of you may still be starting off your morning. I gave you my top 5 teams in the NFL in the wake of the Washington football team taking down the Steelers and big win for the Bills against the San Francisco 49ers, playing that game down in Arizona. So let me start off here again. My top 5 teams in the NFL, the OutKick top 5. We can't do the bottom 5 yet because we've got the Cowboys and the Ravens coming up tonight. We've got Tuesday Night Football in the event that some of you had forgotten about that, and I know I kind of did because we've had so many different games, so many different moving parts. But I've got the Chiefs as the best team in the NFL right now. I've got the Saints as the second best team in the NFL. Steelers dropping them down to third after losing to the Washington football team. We'll talk about that a bit in a moment. We've got the Packers dropping, kind of holding right around the fourth best team in the NFL. And then I am bringing the Bills up, courtesy of this big win to get them to 9-3 on the season. I've got the Bills as the fifth best team in the NFL. What other teams have claims on potentially being in that universe? We've got the Rams, we've got the Browns, and by the way, coming up now, we have got the Bills going up against the Steelers. That'll actually be a pretty intriguing game. Certainly a lot of people in Kansas City paying attention to that because right now the Steelers still have the overall position, at least, to be the number one overall seed, the Steelers are. But the Chiefs, if they could find a way to keep winning, maybe get to 15-1. I mean, like I said, they're 20-1 in their last 21. Would it really stun anybody if the Chiefs ended up being the overall number one seed? I don't think it would, but that is now a massive game between the Bills and the Steelers. Already big, but potentially becoming even bigger as we are continuing to look ahead. Got the Rams right outside of the top 5, the Browns right outside of the top 5, Titans and the Seahawks both with disappointing losses kind of floating around out there as well. Dolphins in the mix. There are a lot of good football teams. I'm not sure how many great football teams there are. In fact, I actually am kind of sure. There's one great football team, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. So that is the top 5 and change from OutKick. Now that we've got all the best teams playing, I can't do the bottom 5 until we figure out what exactly is going on with that game between the Cowboys and the Ravens, given that the NFC East is on a bit of a hot streak right now with Washington beating Pittsburgh and with the Giants beating the Seahawks, both teams on the road. Who knows? Maybe the Cowboys can keep that momentum going and actually take the Ravens down. So I will say this. I'm going to talk first about the Bills game last night against the 49ers. This is, I think, a sign of the 49ers not being treated fairly and of their organization being unwilling to fight a battle that I think they would win. I want you to think about this for a minute. Stanford relocated to Washington, the state of Washington. They did their practice in a public park outdoors in Washington. And then, by the way, Stanford and David Shaw, I think David Shaw is probably the most underrated coach in college football. Stanford got the win against Washington. Credit to them. But Stanford has the money and resources to file a lawsuit against being forced out of the Bay Area in Santa Clara County. Instead, they just went away. San Jose State, they went out to Hawaii. They now are traveling for what should have been a home game again. And the team that the most people are going to notice, the 49ers, moved to Arizona rather than actually challenge Santa Clara County over not being able to play in their home stadium. And just pointing out how absurd this is in the Bay Area in general, I want you to listen and think about this for a minute. They are allowing Cal to play in Berkeley, okay? Cal can play in Berkeley. The 49ers and Stanford can't. What sense does that make? What logical sense? If this is about health, and look, I think all these teams should be able to play without fans present, certainly, as they have been playing all season. But there is no logical reason whatsoever to support the idea that the 49ers can't play in Santa Clara County and San Jose State can't and Stanford can't, but the University of California can play in Berkeley. If it's not safe to play in anywhere in the Bay Area, then that's a rule I disagree with, but at least there would be consistency. If it's safe enough to play anywhere in the Bay Area, then it should be safe enough to play everywhere. This isn't complicated. This is a reasonable, rational position to adopt. And instead, they're making a ridiculous decision. Some of you may say, well, why does that matter? I definitely think that the 49ers would have played better, I really do, if they had been able to stay in their home market and be able to play with everybody that they are friends with, right? With everybody that they are family with everybody that they have their normal life surrounding them. Instead, they put them on the road, put them in Arizona. They're having to travel just like the Bills are. And ultimately, I think the Bills are substantially a better team than the 49ers are. That's why I told you that I love the Bills to win this game. The Bills won it going away. But it's still pretty crazy in general that the 49ers weren't willing to stand up to these nincompoops in Santa Clara County and actually file a lawsuit, because if they had been willing to do that, if that were a battle that they would actually have fought, then they would have been in a position to actually be able to play at home. And who knows what the difference might have been if instead of having to travel right in December in the midst of all this madness, if they had been able to actually play at home. And by the way, some people out there disagree with my opinion about the fact that it's safe to play football. I think it's a tiny number of people, but if it's not safe to play in Santa Clara County, how is it safe to make hundreds of people travel? Right now, people are saying, hey, don't travel at all. That's what the CDC is saying right now, right? Whether you agree or disagree with it. Santa Clara County's decision ensured that hundreds of people affiliated with San Jose State, affiliated with the San Francisco 49ers, and Stanford University all had to go on the road and play somewhere else. How does that make anything safer? The 49ers are all living in hotel rooms or condos or apartments or wherever they're putting all their players up. Everybody is still traveling. And in fact, it's actually making everything more dangerous. It just doesn't make any sense at all. And I thought that factored in a bit, probably. And I don't think they'll say anything in the postgame. But you can't really convince me that the 49ers wouldn't have been much better off being able to play at home on their Monday night game as opposed to having to go on the road. And ultimately, credit to the Bills because they got down early, got stopped 4th and goal at the goal line, and then really just took it to San Francisco from there. And so, as a result, Bills surging into my top 5. Now, the other big game, Monday Night Football. What did we learn from the Steelers' performance? I think the biggest takeaway is they can't run the football. The Steelers can't. And they're going to play close games throughout the postseason. They don't have the ability to distance themselves from you. The reason why I like the Chiefs so much is the Chiefs can get hot and they can be up 21-0 on you. Or if the Chiefs start off slow, they can be down 24-0 like we saw, sorry Texan fans, in the second half, and they still have an ability, in the first half, they still have an ability to come back in the second half and blow you out because their offense is just that good. And they can get just that hot in the process. And I don't think that the Steelers have that ability. They can't run the football. They're going to play close games. Their defense has started to be a little bit suspect. I think the loss of Dupree could be pretty significant to them. Now TJ Watt can be doubled. And I do think for all the talk about the Steelers, and that's going to be the biggest storyline, I do think we have to talk about Alex Smith, who, to me, has to be the comeback player, not just of the year, but of the decade. This was a guy that had a potential to be so seriously injured that he was dealing with death, right? the infections, all the surgeries, everything else, to come back and play as he has and have the Washington football team in a position which is pretty amazing where they could win the overall game and be in a position, the division. Maybe it's a weak division, but right now the Giants are playing well, and you've also got the Washington football team playing well. Why not? Why not be in a position where you could have one of the all-time greatest comebacks? Again, not a comeback player of the year. It might be a comeback player of the decade, might even be a comeback player of the millennium so far for Alex Smith. One of the best stories that is out there by far. So those are the two big takeaways to me as we broke down everything in Monday Night Football, the doubleheader. The other big takeaway, and if you've been listening to this show since we started, first of all, thank you, or you're listening on the podcast, wherever you are, I'm still fired up that the Steeler game against the Washington football team wasn't able to be easily watched by everybody. I just thought that was absolutely crazy. Personally, that we're in a position where that could be the scenario. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all that they wouldn't put every one of these games on for everybody to be able to watch. So we'll see what ends up happening going forward. But right now, my top five in the OutKick top five, the Chiefs, the Saints, the Steelers, the Packers, and the Bills in that order. Congrats to those five. And by the way, how good was Josh Allen? 4 touchdown passes, completed over 80% of his passes. This guy, when you go back and look, Baker Mayfield in that draft class looking pretty good. I think it's fair to say Josh Allen looking pretty good. And then Lamar Jackson fading, but still certainly for where he's been drafted, a very good pick. And it looks like Sam Darnold and also Josh Rosen are going to be the guys that never really come together from that scenario. And by the way, the Bills finally managing to vanquish the Hail Murray so they don't have to think about that. They went back to the same place where they had been victimized by the DeAndre Hopkins catch, and they got their revenge on that field of horrors. And so the Bills surge into our top five.